All right, everybody, welcome back. We are still looking at left guards, and with this video, again, we're going to be kind of lowering our standard because now we're starting to look for the more backups, guys who are brought in as competition that you don't really expect to win, guys that you hope don't really have to play that much. This is kind of like if you're signing one of the big guys or you're drafting one of the top guys like Fatanu, Barton, Bebe, whoever else, then you look at these guys as like backups. They're quality backups. They belong in the NFL. They belong on a roster. But if you're asking them to start, that's probably not very reasonable. That's probably a bad idea, and you're probably going to regret it. Now, I think a lot of the things that I just said could also apply to the previous video players, but those guys have more of a history of quality play. Those guys are more veteran type players, generally speaking. I think it's a better bet. These guys, they're good bets as backups, but beyond that, it's tough. All right, so let's start the evaluations with Dalton Risner. This is a guy who was drafted by the Broncos in the second round and started out good, and it felt like he got worse every year that went along. He was involved in that sideline kerfluffle in 2022 on Christmas Day, where I think he shoved somebody or he got shoved, one of the two. So after that season, he left Denver and went to Minnesota. He did play a lot, but again, it just seems like he gets worse with every season he plays, and that continued on more or less in Minnesota. So I don't know what's going on here. I don't know how you can come in as a rookie and play what seems to be your best football and then just get gradually worse. He's like Blake Griffin or something. I don't know. But he is only going to be 29 this year. He's still a pretty decent age. And the deal that he signed with Minnesota was 1 year, $3 million. So if you want to bring in Dalton Risner, you could probably get him for about that much again. Maybe something like 1 year, 2.5 even. Because like I said, it seems like things are just getting further and further away from him. I don't think he's a guy that I would be wanting to bring in as a starter because of his career track. Seems like it just keeps getting worse and worse. This PFF grade, according to a lot of the things that I've seen of Dalton Risner, is probably generous, by the way. I think he's probably a little bit worse than this. So if you bring in Risner even as a temporary starter, I think that's just not going to quite cut it. But if you want to bring him in as a reserve, that to me would be a little more appealing, a little more interesting, and I would be relatively open to that. He is somebody who's played left guard pretty much his whole career, so at least he has that going for you. So, yeah, I think this guy would be better than most of the options listed here. All right, next guy would be Tyler Shatley. This guy definitely falls into the old player who doesn't necessarily have a lot left and just probably feels lucky to be in the NFL still. Bucket, going to turn 33 in a few months here. Played not very good last year, but did play a decent amount, almost all of it at left guard. If you peel it back a couple of years, you can find some seasons where he played respectably well. But again, he's about to turn 33. I don't think he's going to keep that up. You can also find a few years, by the way. He used to be a center. Last 2 years, he's been playing left guard. Now, maybe he would be better served to go back to playing center, but he's played left guard almost exclusively for 2 years now. So I don't know how much that applies. Again, at 33, he could just completely fall off a cliff and become unplayable. But if you wanted to bring in a veteran backup to offset your potentially rookie starter, excuse me, then Tyler Shatley would at least be a somewhat workable option, I guess. Again, not very exciting, but most of these guys you sign as backups aren't. I think that Tyler Shatley is a guy you could probably get for very, very cheap, maybe like 2 million. 1 year, 2 million, 1 year, 2.5 million at most. I don't see any reason why he would get more than that. So you wouldn't be spending big money, and he would probably be passable in that role. Next guy, this is more of an interesting one to me. John Feliciano of the San Francisco 49ers. This guy has played a good amount of left guard in his career, but the appeal of him is that he's kind of played all over. He's played center and he's played right guard. Last year, he was exclusively a center. The year before, he was mostly a left guard with a little bit playing at the other positions. The year before that, he was a right guard with a lot of center and a little bit of left guard. This most recent year, he was mostly right guard, but a lot of left guard and center, so he can play all over. He's still playing pretty decently if you look at these grades and you look at the way he's looked at by most of the league. Now, not stellar in some of these recent years, and that Shanahan scheme is probably making him look better than he actually is. But John Feliciano is somebody who you could bring in to be a backup at all three positions on the interior offensive line, and you could feel pretty good about him. Now, again, I want to stress this grade to me is probably deceptive. It's because Shanahan does what he does. But Feliciano would bring some value to the table. And if he wanted to be a utility backup for even as much as like $4 million, that might be worth it. He's a pretty decent player. He offers versatility, decent versatility, not just versatility in name. And that might be the kind of signing you make if you want to give yourself some flexibility with your offensive line bench, because those guys do need to be able to shift around sometimes. Next guy I'm going to look at here would be David Edwards from Buffalo. This is a younger one. He's about to turn 27, so he's coming into his prime theoretically. Mostly played tight end last year, actually, because there just wasn't room for him in the offensive line. If you peel it back, you can see that he played a little bit at left guard in 2022. 2021, he actually played basically the whole season at left guard and played respectably, but Buffalo's just kind of moved off of him, even though he was a pretty good player and is still at a reasonable age. This might be a circumstance where you have the opportunity to get a good player who's just kind of fallen through the cracks here. Now, I don't know what kind of contract he's going to get because he's coming off that a very small deal, and David Edwards is not at the age where he's just going to take a tiny little scrap, but he also hasn't played that much the last couple years, so that's a little more hard to judge. I still don't think you can bring him in and feel great about him starting, but maybe that would even be better than somebody like an Andrews Pete or a Cody Whitehair, because at least he's young, at least he has upside, at least he's played good in, the semi recent past. But I do think that would probably be more of like a 1 year, $4 million type deal if he does take a 1 year deal, because he hasn't played that much lately and he's trying to prove it. And he's somebody who maybe you could kind of shoehorn in there as a starter and not feel terrible about it. Depends on your perception of him. But Buffalo did kind of ease him out of that starting lineup these last couple years, and there has to be a reason why. Buffalo's a team that's had a really good offense and has done things correctly for the most part lately. And the last guy I want to look at in this video would be Chris Reed. This is really kind of starting to get down there. This guy played 2 snaps last year. But if you peel the onion back far enough, you go back to 2021, played about half the season, and played over 300 snaps at left guard. So decent stuff there. You can go back the previous year. He played almost the whole season, and all of it was at left guard. So there is some good stuff here. He's going to turn 32 before the season starts. This is definitely a guy you bring in just, hopefully you never have to play him. But if you did have to play him, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Ooh, excuse me. Ugh, something came out a little bit funky there. You wouldn't have to spend very much money. He's probably like $1.5 million, $2 million type guy, because he didn't play last year and he was on a deal that was already really small anyway. So I think Chris Reed would be a budget option if you want a veteran backup, somebody to sit behind rookie X. That makes sense to me. And yeah, that's what I'm seeing from this crop of left guards. Those are the options. They're not bad options, but we're definitely getting down to the guys that you would not feel comfortable if they were starting. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think about this crew. Might do another left guard video later today. I'm not sure yet. See you guys soon.